No, he's not, man. Oh. No.
Oh my god. Since the history of Formula 1 started, we have seen drivers come and go from Formula 1. They've left after a great career, they might have had a few wins, a championship or two. We've seen some even return, for example, Michael Schumacher in 2010, and Robert Kubica obviously returning this season after a few years out. But there's one driver in particular, now he hasn't won championships, he hasn't won a race, but he's had a really, really rocky start to his Formula 1 career. He's had a few podiums here and there, and he has been on the spotlight for many, many years. We have talked about him actually quite a lot of times on the F1 debate show, all the way back when we started in 2016. And that guy is called Daniil Kvyat. Now, obviously, you may have seen by the title that we're not going to talk about trading places. Trading places, by the way, was a reference to one of our very earlier episodes, which we will link down in the description below. And obviously, that malarkey involved Max Verstappen and obviously Daniil Kvyat. Daniel was at Red Bull and Max was at Toro Rosso, and they effectively swapped places. Now, in this episode, we're not going to refresh that story. We'll give maybe a little bit of a synopsis. We're not going to go over that too much and why it should have happened, because it's ancient, it's already happened. He's left Formula 1 and now he's back in. So it is very much ancient. The book is closed on that. But we're going to be talking about, is he, kind of angry about that? And does he want to get back to Red Bull after this big saga, after this big problem has occurred with him? So I'll just give you a bit of a rundown. If you don't really know what has happened between those, obviously, Daniil Kvyat came in at the end of 2013 season, obviously ready for the V6 era with Toro Rosso. Now, obviously, 2014 was a good season by him. It earned him enough to be replacing Sebastian Vettel and partnering alongside Australian driver Daniel Ricciardo at Red Bull Racing. The promotion from Toro Rosso to Red Bull, obviously, if you do that, it's one of the best things possibly. Obviously, it shows that you're one of the best drivers. The Red Bull Junior Academy, like we have talked about in previous episodes, is so tight, and if you get into it, it's like the Juilliard School. It's like a very privileged thing to do. So obviously, Daniil Kvyat, through all that, got into Red Bull. 2015 was a good season by him. He got a podium in Hungary, obviously making it a 1-2 for the team, obviously just behind Daniel Ricciardo. It was a good productive season from him, and he even outscored Ricciardo at the end of the 2015 season, which meant that they were going to retain the two drivers, including Kvyat, for the 2016 season. Also, after I mentioned, in 2015, he was obviously, in 2014, he was the youngest point scorer in Australia. Obviously, that had been beaten by Verstappen. But at that point, he was the youngest driver at about 19 years old, I think. So obviously, he rose into 2016. It was a good winner testing from them. Obviously, Red Bull Racing with Renault at this point. So we're pretty happy with what they've got. We're ready. Two drivers had been in there for a few seasons, and they were ready basically to go in there and show Mercedes, especially Mercedes, who was boss, and hopefully challenge for that drivers' championship. I think at that year, Ricciardo would set his sights on that. I said that Daniil Kvyat was one of my favourite drivers, if not the best driver at Red Bull, and they were going for it. Australia was a fine race, Bahrain was an okay race, but obviously the big thing came from China. Now, there was good and bad things from Daniil Kvyat in China. The good thing is that he finished P3 behind Sebastian Vettel and Nico Rosberg. The bad thing is that because of a crash that he caused on the first corner, he was labelled by Sebastian Vettel as the Torpedo. Now, obviously, this name has followed him through Formula 1 for many, many years, well, to this day even. So obviously he did good before that, I would say, a few podiums, including Hungary last year, the previous year, and China at that point. And after an abysmal Russia, where he crashed with Sebastian Vettel twice, and obviously effectively made him crash, he was told that he was going to be demoted from Red Bull Racing back to Toro Rosso. He was going to be replaced by the young guy, 18-year-old Max Verstappen. This was crazy. We talk about this in Trading Places. Now, that move had happened, Verstappen went on to win the race, and Danny had a pretty bad Spanish Grand Prix. The Toro Rosso obviously wasn't up to speed, was nothing like the Red Bull that he had been driving, and of course he had been basically stabbed in the heart as hard as he can by people like Christian Horner, and even you could say the young Max, even though not all the blame can be put on him at that point. Rode through 2016 with that Toro Rosso alongside Carlos Sainz. It was okay. He had a few big fumbles, he had some big crashes, he had some big spins, but again, he finished outside the top 10 in the championship. Really hurt by this demotion, and it really was quite bad. We talk about even though Verstappen was excelling in Formula 1, we still had to kind of give our heart, give our sympathy to Daniil Kvyat because of what he'd been put through. 2017 rolls by, and obviously Carlos Sainz jumped the ship to Renault halfway through the season. Obviously a productive year with him. Now obviously then it gets to Singapore, and he is basically replaced for the remaining races of that year. He was replaced by Pierre Gasly. Obviously Carlos Sainz's spot was replaced by Brendan Hartley, and at this point we were thinking, okay, where's Danny going to go? Is he being replaced for a medical reason? He certainly can't be out of Formula 1. And then obviously the news comes around after he makes a one-off appearance and a points finish at the US Grand Prix in 2017 that he's going to be replaced from Formula 1. He's going to be kicked out of Toro Rosso and obviously replaced by Pierre and Brendan for 2018. So long story short, guys, that basically means that Daniil Kvyat started his career with Toro Rosso, moved to Red Bull Racing, pretty good, I would say, at Red Bull Racing, and then, you know, in 2 seasons goes from Red Bull to Toro Rosso to nothing. It was just absolutely terrible by him. It was a terrible decision by many people, and I can't say that everyone was blaming Daniil Kvyat for what he would do. Yes, he's had a crash here and there. Yes, he has caused a few crashes here and there. Obviously, as I said, the most famous when he collided with Sebastian Vettel. But he's had some good standout podiums, including Hungary, and he outscored Ricciardo in his first Red Bull season, obviously, which I said at the start. So, you know, all those factors kind of pointed to the fact where we can't really understand why Daniil Kvyat's now out of a race, why he's not being driven. It sounded a little bit kind of, bad, hurtful in a way. Obviously 2018 where Toro Rosso really struggled with the Honda power unit, but showing some good signs of improvement. And after a debate about what is going to happen to their drivers, especially when Pierre Gasly obviously goes off to replace Danny Ricciardo at Red Bull, Daniil Kvyat is given a shot back at Red Bull Racing, obviously alongside Thai British driver Alex Albon. So we are all caught up to speed there. Obviously I hope you enjoyed that little kind of synopsis about Daniil Kvyat, the torpedo, who is a real head turner in Formula 1. He has got a big backstory behind him, and he is the tip of the iceberg, and I don't think we'll be done talking about him in the years to come. In the Australian Grand Prix, he finished in a really solid 10th position, and obviously I remember talking to Jordan on social media during the race, obviously because he made the review, and I was saying to him that he shared my driver of the day alongside Bottas, because Daniil Kvyat in a Toro Rosso Honda, which, yes, as I say, you know, it was good, it was productive in the previous season, but it's still a Honda. We know how many problems McLaren had with them. So all the way through that, obviously Albon finished in 15th position, which I think was the lowest position of the actual drivers that remained in that race. Through that, Daniil Kvyat puts in a good position to finish in the points, but not just that, to battle Pierre Gasly, who theoretically you could say, well, he is driving for his old team, and theoretically he could be kind of in the position that Danny should have been in, and he might even deserve. So really we're going to be talking about in this episode, you know, does he deserve to get back to Red Bull, and has he got his sight set on that seat? Now, it's only the first race of 2019, but it's not that we're talking about Danny from one race. We've seen, you know, loads of races by Danny. We've seen what he can do in the shadows of progression. We've seen what he can do when he is at the top and he's fighting for podiums and wins. And of course we've all seen him when he is at his lowest point. So, you know, it's Daniil Kvyat is really, he's been kicked around a lot, or that's what you might look from the outside in, and it really, sometimes you think with Daniil Kvyat, you know, does he deserve to have all of the blame, to be kicked out of Formula 1, to be, yes, he is given a shot, but it's at a team that he's already done. It's been there, done that for Danny, and it is a little bit awkward. So Jordan, I'm going to bring you in this episode for the first time. Now, if you've already gone and done something in your life, you should be good at it the second time round, shouldn't you? Is that what people are thinking about Daniil Kvyat at Toro Rosso, or is it almost that he still has this kind of vengeance that he was kicked out of Red Bull, and does he want to prove Red Bull wrong and kind of get back there and say, you made a terrible decision?
Well, I think when Daniil Kvyat came back into Formula 1, we were quite surprised at the fact that he would give Toro Rosso a third chance, because he was just kicked around, as like Lyle said, during his Red Bull days, and it was quite depressing to see, because I believe he should have lasted the season in 2016, even with those two incidents, if you like. I think it was a bit harsh, and I think there was more to it than Daniil Kvyat crashing into Vettel and, you know, and causing all that. I think there was more to it than that, because we've seen a number of drivers, like obviously Grosjean, Maldonado, who've crashed more times than Daniil Kvyat at a similar sort of level, and they weren't demoted or they weren't, you know, sacked. Obviously, Grosjean had one race ban, but that was different. So, and I think that there was definitely more to it than Daniil Kvyat, you know, crashing, as I said. And I think we all thought, okay, going back to Toro Rosso, he's going to, like, the first time, sorry, he's going to like refigure himself, restart and go again, because he was battling with some kind of mental problems, mental illness, sorry, that we didn't really know about until he came forward and kind of like said this. I don't know how official those actually are, but I did see something where he was saying that he wasn't himself, he was in a really bad place, and he was just all over the place. Well, I mean, you would be, wouldn't you? He worked so hard to get to Formula One. This is how he get tread. No, I wouldn't like that, to be perfectly honest. And then, as obviously as like Lyle said, they're going back. Toro Rosso in 2017. I remember one of his last moments there was when he hit the wall, coming into the stadium section at Singapore, and obviously hit that wall, going underneath the tunnel, underneath the grandstands, and that was pretty much game over for Daniil Kvyat. Apart from that one race in Austin, where he wouldn't have been there had Gasly not been competing in the Super Formula Series in the same year. And obviously that was a bit of a shock when it was announced that he was going to be demoted again, or put to the sidelines for a bit. And then once we heard that Gasly was going to take over, it was like, I can't see Daniil Kvyat coming back in 2018. So as far as we were aware, that done and dusted. And then, as like I said, when he get announced that he's coming back in 2019, it was like, well, wow, that's just a real big shock. And for Toro Rosso to actually have the nerve, Red Bull actually have the nerve to go back to Daniil Kvyat and ask him to come back into the sport full time, because at the time he was working alongside Ferrari as a development driver. Asking for him to come back, and for Daniil Kvyat to go yes. So either he wanted to prove everybody wrong, or he was low on shillings. So a bit of both if you like. But I think this is definitely a resurgent year for Daniil Kvyat. As like I said, 1 point at Australia. It's a very, very good start. 2 points now that he's scored in both races that he's actually competed in fully, and obviously his last one was the Austin Grand Prix, sorry, the US Grand Prix, where obviously he was standing for Pierre Gasly, and it is a make or break season for him, and I have seen a lot of reports saying that Daniil Kvyat back to Red Bull. It is early days. Let's not count the chickens just yet. Let's get Bahrain out the way, which is this weekend, guys, and not only Bahrain but the rest of the season. Let's see how he does. Will he be consistent? Because he might score 1 point this race, but let's say he doesn't score a point for the rest of the season. Now all going to be that Kvyat wasn't the driver that we all thought he was. And if that is the case, he will be out the door. Once he leaves this time, he won't be coming back. That's if he does get sacked or demoted again. He won't be coming back. I don't know about with Red Bull, but with another team, I don't know, because I think Red Bull have left a lot of mental scars there, and the damage is pretty much done in terms of that, if that was to happen. But as like I said, it's only been one race. Let's not jump the gun just yet, and let's see how he does this season. And I do want Daniil Kvyat to do well. Don't get me wrong. I do want him to do well. I want to see all the drivers do well, but certainly want more like him, because he is a good driver. There's a lot of talent in there as well. Yes, he gets called the torpedo. We all laugh about it and stuff, but let's be realistic. He is a good driver. Is he World Championship material? Maybe, if you like, if he gets a chance with Red Bull, but obviously the car has to be there, of course. If it was with Ferrari, let's say, or even Mercedes, would he have a chance? He could put in a couple of good performances, but obviously we'll never know. We can just say, well, yes, he would have a chance. No, he wouldn't have a chance. We don't know how he would cope in a situation like that. He's never been in that position before. But another rumour that's been coming about as well. Obviously, the performance of Pierre Gasly was quite disappointing in Australia, and then, as like I said this even in the show before the week of the race. I said that, all right, if Daniil Kvyat doesn't perform, Pierre Gasly doesn't perform, there's going to be this whole Gasly back to Toro Rosso, Daniil Kvyat's going back to Red Bull headlines, and I thought this would occur about the halfway point of the season, and it hasn't. It's happening after race 1. It's like, this is a lot earlier than what I was thinking. So let's say Pierre Gasly has a shocking season. He's nowhere near Max Verstappen. He's outside the top 6, which is probably the minimal expectation for him this season, to be in the top 6, because that's where the car is, from what I've seen anyway. Well, one of them is anyway. And let's say if he doesn't achieve that, and he's P8, P9, will he get relegated or will he get sacked? Possibly, because Red Bull, as we've seen before, Red Bull are just dishing out, drivers here and there. As I said, Alex Lake could be possibly coming back in, even though he's just been announced as the new Jaguar Formula E driver, actually just a couple of days ago, replacing Nelson Piquet. Controversial story, I know, but Nelson Piquet Jr. Controversial story, I know, but that's for another story. Anyways, so I thought he would be coming back in because he was part of the Red Bull Junior program. And also, obviously, he's not now with them having ties to Formula E. So let's say, for instance, Pierre Gasly has a shocking season. Will they switch places? No, in my opinion. I think Daniil Kvyat should have another season at Toro Rosso. Don't jump the gun just yet. Don't put him into Red Bull. That's if Daniil Kvyat has a good season at Toro Rosso. Let him have 1, possibly 2 seasons. Evaluate the decision. But do I think that Daniil Kvyat could go back to Red Bull in the future? Of course I could. I think he is more than good enough. To be fair, partner alongside Max Verstappen, or even replace Verstappen if he goes to Mercedes or Ferrari like it's rumoured. And I do believe that Kvyat I'll say that again. I do believe that Kvyat does have the ability to be able to go to Red Bull and put up a fight against Verstappen or even Gasly if that is going to be his teammate, or even someone else if both of them decide to leave or even get sacked, for instance. So, Lyle, I'm going to ask you this: do you think Daniil Kvyat does have what it takes to go back into Red Bull and actually challenge for a championship? Because that's what obviously Red Bull want with Honda. And do you think that Pierre Gasly could, if he does have a bad season, do you think Red Bull will show him the door after one season, or do you think they'll give him another chance?
I feel like with Red Bull, it's as you said at the start, and as you said in other episodes, it is a very tight run ship. It's almost like the best of the best. They've got loads of an academy and things like that. Yeah. Even though they have been a little bit lenient with other drivers, like for example, with Ricciardo and Verstappen, that was pulled through a long time. Obviously, there was a point where Ricciardo kind of hit a bit of a door wall where he wasn't winning, races in that season. And he had 7 overall when he left Red Bull. And I think there was a season where he went completely without a win. I think that might have been 2015. It's when how they tried Daniil Kvyat was obviously terrible. It just showed though that when this happened, that Red Bull, that's happened. It hasn't happened before in Formula One, but in a long time ago, where drivers have been replaced, it just shows kind of. I didn't like it because it just showed that they weren't really giving him a chance. They were kind of jumping the gun with this guy who, let's be fair, we're talking about Verstappen in this situation before he'd actually won, which at that point he was a guy who had retired before. He had got points in Australia in that same year, but then apart from that, he'd actually really achieved nothing standoutish. I'd say the only thing about Verstappen that was good is probably his age. He was 17 when he went into F2. Incredible. He was one of the youngest guys in the Red Bull Junior program, and he was showing he was good. And obviously, he was working with Red Bull behind the scenes. And when Red Bull did it, it was a big, bold move that, as I say, none of the big teams have done. We've never seen Mercedes or Ferrari or anyone else do that. And through the years, me and Jordan have seen these rumours, like, for example, like he's just said, Pierre Gasly might go back to Toro Rosso after Australia, not after Australia, in this season if he doesn't perform. But I also remember seeing that rumour after winter testing. And I just think, yes, obviously the rumours, you can't believe everything you see. They say that you should assume that a rumour is false until you can actually prove it's true. But you just think, where the hell are people getting these stuff from? But then you actually have to sit back and you think, okay, well, maybe what happens if this is true? If this is true, I think it's pathetic. I really do, because how do they expect anybody to succeed? And then also, where's this kind of double standard? Daniil Kvyat's a person as well. Max is, doing a good job, but he didn't win in Australia, and he might not win for a lot of times. Even though it's Mercedes and Ferrari who were beating Verstappen, fair and square, and he's getting onto the podium, you could look and say, well, Kvyat did that. He did that in China, behind a Ferrari. One of the, obviously Ferrari 2016 wasn't great. Vettel had a good start of the season, and obviously it really backed off. His performance didn't show, and obviously the car was terrible. And then obviously Nico won that race, and obviously they absolutely dominated 2016. Won every race bar 2, obviously, which was Ricciardo and Verstappen of Red Bull. So you think, that double standard of we're giving everything to one guy and not the other, it was just absolutely terrible. And, it seemed like they weren't giving people a fair shot at Red Bull. Even though that was a rumour, obviously the Daniil Kvyat actually thing happened. And if you went to Red Bull, I'd be a little bit scared. Wouldn't you, John? It's a little bit how long have I got for an actual drive? Because that Ferrari, okay, I just want to say one thing, again, obviously talking about this kind of thing. Kimi Räikkönen, remember, he went 115 races without winning a Grand Prix, but he went 115 races, probably about 70 of them races were with Ferrari when he returned in 2014. Yeah, so let's say 70 races in 2014 season to obviously the 2018 season. That, and he was there where he did get podiums, he did get consistent finishes, but he hadn't won a race. He was partner with Sebastian Vettel, who was winning races. So then you think to yourself, well, what happens if I compare that to Ricciardo and Kvyat, or Verstappen and Kvyat? One guy wins all the races. He he gets demoted, but why didn't Raikkonen get demoted? And he didn't. Remember, at the end of the season, he left fair and square to go to Sauber. And I honestly think that if he didn't announce that he wanted to switch, they wouldn't have done that. They would have said, okay, Charles, we want you in the team, but we're going to give Raikkonen kind of the chance to, bow out on his own or switch teams on his own. There was no implication from Ferrari that they were going to kick Raikkonen out. There never has, and there never was. Obviously, Nico Rosberg, he announced his retirement. He just won the World Championship, so obviously there was never a reason why they would get rid of Nico Rosberg. But let's just say, theoretically, that Nico wasn't performing well. They would have never, ever kicked Nico out of the team. If Lewis Hamilton goes to, let's say, the Italian Grand Prix without a win this season, they will never say Hamilton is out. And again with Valtteri Bottas, he's on 4 wins at the moment, but he went through a dull stage, especially in 2018, where he didn't win a single race. He was treated badly by the team, but he was never shown the door, and I don't think he actually would do.
I'll tell you another place where I would obviously compare with Ferrari as well, but another team where I would say that they do kind of treat drivers quite badly, especially young ones, is McLaren. Now, for instance, you look at the performance of Sergio Perez in 2013, he only had 1 season out the door. Kevin Magnussen came in, out the door. He was only out the door because Alonso came in. Yeah. And then Stoffel Van Dorn. Look at his record in the younger ranks. I think when in the so-called, the GP2 F2 series, when it was formed in 2005, I think he, out of all the drivers, won more races during the season than anybody else, including Russell and Leclerc, I believe. So, and he won all sorts when he was younger. He was tipped for big things. The next Jackie Ickx or better than Jackie Ickx, you know what I mean? And obviously, they were going through a bit of a bad spell, but I thought that they just built the team around Alonso and they never gave Stoffel a shot. A bit like when Checo was at McLaren, it was all around Button. When K-Mag was at the team, he came through the ranks, it was all about Button. And, after a season, you can't judge a character just from 1 season. It's like in football, when a manager comes in, like the players, manage 10 games and they're out the door. If they haven't won like 5 of their games, if they won 1, draw, 5 or whatever, or draw 4, let's say, they're out the door straight away. And it's like you're just rushing the good. You need to give them a chance. But on the flip side, you could say, Formula 1 is a very expensive sport, and if both cars aren't performing, sponsors are going to be dropping out because they want their car at the front. Obviously, the top teams anyways, maybe the midfield teams, not so much, because the sponsors should know that they're not going to be at the top. But let's say at the top 6, Red Bull, for instance, all their sponsors are going to be like, the Tag Heuers, or your Pumas, or your, who else have they got, Esso, and obviously Aston Martin as well. And, they're going to be like, come on, Red Bull, I want you at the top because we're putting money in this team and you're getting nowhere. And obviously, if the drivers aren't performing, even the young guns, and then you could say, right, then use it out the door. Because again, the lower you finish in the tables, especially teams, then the less money you get, and again, less money for revenue, less money for this, and then you're going to go back, further and further back. Look at the decline of McLaren, less and less sponsors, less and less money. Now look what's happened. Look at Williams, like we talked about in the last episode.
But with McLaren though, in 2013. I remember they were saying that it was their worst season since 1982. Obviously, I think it's got worse since then. But
I say it's a horrible season, but when I look back at it now,
it's not as bad. Yeah,
it was a great season.
So in that race, in that year, obviously for McLaren, sorry John, as I say, call you Jensen there. Sorry John, but Jensen's last win is 2012 Brazil, obviously, which is one of the better races in Formula 1 history, and that is McLaren's last win. So in that year, you had Sergio Perez, which was a good driver. We were excited to see him because he had an unbelievable season with Sauber in 2012. He had a few good podiums. I remember Malaysia, which was, I think, was the second race of the season, really 4-hour long race, and he challenged Fernando Alonso for the win, and he spun out on the last corner of the last lap, and that's what cost him the race win. So yeah, he went there, and we were all really excited about that because he didn't work through McLaren's ranks, but he deserved to be there. He deserved to be in Formula 1. He wanted, all the teams wanted him, and McLaren snatched him up in one of the best kind of transfer deals. They were a bit like when Juventus got Ronaldo. It was amazing. And then obviously he didn't perform like Ronaldo, but neither did Jensen. Jensen gave everything to the team like Checo did, but Jensen never won a race in 2013. And it was the bad power unit.
In fact, obviously, sorry about that. In fact, if you look at K-Mag's results, K-Mag got a podium in 2014,
Yeah.
Jensen was classified on the podium, but never finished on the podium because he only got on the podium because Ricciardo got disqualified. Now, if Ricciardo didn't get disqualified, K-Mag obviously would have just been the only McLaren driver to finish on the podium. So, in fact, Kevin Magnussen has got a more recent podium than Jensen Button has.
Well, there we go then. Well, that's what I was saying. So I was saying, the kind of sometimes the favour of the drivers. So in that year, 2013,
but then you could say because it's Jensen Button, you can't sack Jensen Button. Why can't you sack Jensen
So
Button?
in that year, I don't know what the permutations were, but obviously, Jensen and Sergio were probably on the same level. As Jones just said, their K-Mag, he performed not better than JB, and again, I don't know who finished who, in terms of the 2014 season, but, a podium in the first race, his first race, and he was the first Danish driver on the podium as well, obviously, which is a big thing. All those things line up, but who was going to be shown the door? And it wasn't going to be Jensen, it was going to be K-Mag and obviously Checo. I do agree with Jordan, he's been in Formula 1 longer, but again, that is a little bit of favouritism, and sometimes that can be said about Verstappen and Red Bull, especially over Gasly now. It never was with Ricciardo because he was a good driver, but again, with Ricciardo and Kvyat, I do think the team lent towards Ricciardo in a way where you thought, why? Like, Ricciardo obviously had 3 wins, didn't he, in 2014, which I thought I don't say one of, it was an amazing season for him, and it was Vettel's worst. In my opinion, that was Vettel's worst season. I don't know why I was talking about Seb.
Of course,
but,
he didn't win a race.
Seb at Red Bull. No, but but he didn't win a race in 2016 as well. And obviously the car was terrible, but I still think that was an okay year for Seb. I'm saying, obviously, I know a lot of people will say 2016 is a bad year, but I'm going to say 2014 is his worst year in Formula 1 ever, because it kind of was a bit weird that his teammate, who came in brand new, was winning 3 races and Seb didn't, and then obviously kind of jumped ship, threw his toys out the Prem. You could say, and went to Ferrari, but anyway, back to Ricciardo, he won 3 races, but then apart from that, as I say, went through a dry spell, especially in 2015, and at that point, Kvyat and Ricciardo were kind of on the same page, but for some reason the team favoured Ricciardo over that. So it wasn't really kind of weird. It was kind of a weird way, and obviously, of course, they favoured somebody else over Kvyat, a brand new guy called Max Verstappen who came through the ranks. And I've just said at the start, at this point, he hasn't won a race, he hasn't podiumed, he hasn't done anything with achievable results, apart from like a few good points finishes here and there. And they favoured this random guy over your guy who you actually have in the team. It was really, really strange from Red Bull. And I don't think that would have been, I don't think he would have wanted that in terms of security. Like, Kvyat was probably thinking, like, I'm in this team, I'm in Red Bull, I should have the security to think that I can, I can stay as a driver. But no, I was replaced quite fast. And to be honest, in terms of the fans as well, we weren't really given any chance to, really sink that in. We didn't hear about the news or anything like that. I always remember it just hit you like a ton of bricks. The news hit you really fast, and then it was like, oh wow, this has happened, and I don't really know what to say about it. It was crazy. So I think that there was a bit of favouritism in it, more so than other teams, John. Because I know you said McLaren have done that. They never kicked anyone out mid-season, but still, though, that Red Bull had a very, I would say they had a bit of a favouritism problem back then. Yeah. Now, so they don't. I don't think anything will happen with Pierre. People might riot if that does happen, if Pierre goes back to Toro Rosso or they switch it up again. And obviously, yes, they are favouring Verstappen, but there isn't favouritism like there was then. Of course, there was never any favouritism when it was Ricciardo and Verstappen because you had 2 amazing drivers. The skills were level, but back then, Ricciardo, for some reason, and I like Ricciardo as well, but for some reason Ricciardo was at the top and Kvyat was at the bottom, and there was a big gap between who was kind of favoured more by the team. And I'll say Kvyat at the end of the day had no security by the team. It was to think that you're a driver, you've done good. 2 races ago, John, you scored points when Ricciardo didn't. He didn't score points in Russia. And I think in that year, John, Kvyat had the only podium from Red Bull and the only points finish from Red Bull. I may be wrong there. I thought with podium he definitely did. And so Kvyat was keeping the team alive and he was ahead of Ricciardo. So at this point, you think, why was he replaced? It just was absolutely crazy.
So, Daniil Kvyat, there was, as I say, a bit of favouritism in that way. But obviously now he's back in Formula 1. I do think that, he's kind of forgotten about what, how it's been treated. He has to move on. Obviously we're still kind of thinking about it, or a few of us are even. We were talking before. I remember at the start of the year when we were on, we had a shared episode with Alex Zaffro, and he said that Daniil Kvyat was his favourite driver, and he got to like him when he was at Red Bull and followed him through. And I was like, well, if I guess that's the same with a lot of people as well. And he might not be your favourite driver, but he's a driver who you'll like, and kind of. I know it sounds a little bit cheesy to say, but you like might sympathise with him now because he's been through a lot, and he's back, and he's like, oh god, it's exciting to watch, and he really was. I love watching Australia for him, and the cameras showed him and Gasly battling each other for about 10 laps. It was so exciting. So the last thing I want to talk about in Daniil Kvyat is the thing about, has he still got a grudge with Red Bull? And, you know, yes, he is with Toro Rosso. It's the Red Bull Junior program, and there is a good chance that he might go back to Red Bull. But in terms of his mindset, is he wanting to go back to Red Bull to stamp out and say, right, Christian Horner, Adrian Newey, you know, whoever the hell's here, and of course especially Max Verstappen, look at me now. I'm back in my seat after a few years. And it's been a long road, and I've proved you all wrong. And basically, just like the nicest way of just saying, right, suck it, I'm back. And it's just like, is that what he's thinking, or is he just thinking to himself? Is he just thinking to himself, right? Okay, I'm back in Formula One now. I'm going to drive to what I want. I'm not going to think about that. I never will. And you know, yes, I might go back to Red Bull because obviously, as I just said, you know, Toro Rosso is a sister team to Red Bull, but if Mercedes and Ferrari come knocking, I'll drive for them. I won't think about Red Bull and what they did in the past, and I'll just let bygones be bygones. Because with Danny, I mean, no driver in the history of Formula One has ever been treated like he has. It seems like we're talking about a real kind of like sympathy case, but we're not really. I mean, obviously, Danny definitely deserves to be back in Formula One. But yeah, no driver has been treated like Danny, and no driver has the story of Danny. I mean, we are witnessing a kind of a comeback kind of thing. Netflix should have made Daniil Kvyat Till I Die instead of making that Sunderland Till I Die. That's the comeback we should all be watching.
That's the biggest
and you know, it's exciting to watch. But is the last saga of that Netflix documentary, Jordan, about him getting to Red Bull and saying, I'm back, I'm here, I'm with a vengeance, and I want to prove to everyone who doubted me wrong, you know, prove to the haters, dab it out to the haters and say, look at what I can do? Or is he just going to live his normal Daniil Kvyat Formula 1 life and, as I say, let bygones be bygones?
I think, obviously, as it is rumoured, they are making a second series of that F1 Drive to Survive series, and I believe one of the features in there will be about Daniil Kvyat, and I believe that it'll be his story of like, pretty much what we explained from him coming up through the ranks and then being demoted and then, you know, rising back up again as well. But obviously your questions there about Daniil Kvyat having a grudge with Toro Rosso. If he did still had a grudge with them, I don't think he would have signed. He would have like re-signed, and he wouldn't have been performing to the way he was, because he would have been just constantly thinking about, you know, the past, if you like. And in Formula One, you can't really think about the past. Like, for example, like when drivers say, "Okay, you made a mistake," like so the media will say, "You made a mistake at this corner and that corner." It's like, what do you make of it? It's like, you know, that was in the past. This is now. I'm gonna have to, you know, forget that, concentrate on the next part, and obviously, and then move forth. Like pretty much again, like a qualifying lap, it's like, or even like a racing lap, you could say, right, okay, I've got that corner wrong, I've got that corner wrong, but I can't worry about that because I've got to get it right the next lap, and then the next lap. That's just life. It's just, you know, and lap after lap after lap after lap. You know, you can't concentrate too much about the past. You've got to look forward, because you will stumble and lose concentration. And Daniil Kvyat won't do that. He won't be having any grudges. He won't be thinking about it. It might come back to him when someone asks about it, but I can't see the media asking about the past. They should look forward. They should, you know, just stop asking all questions about Daniil Kvyat. The past. He needs to look to the future. Daniil Kvyat does as well if he wants to perform. If he does want to get back to his best. I mean, in terms of like laughing at Max Verstappen and stuff, and you know, for points, if you like, like, you know. What are they called? Like bragging rights, that's the word. I think, to be fair, I think Max Verstappen has got the upper arm because he's at Red Bull fighting at the podium. Daniil Kvyat isn't, so I think Max Verstappen still has those rights. But I think if Daniil Kvyat does get back to Red Bull, I think it'll be like, right, yes, like you've still got it in yet, to, you know, to be able to go from like, you know, top back to bottom, then to, you know, to top again. It would be like a very good story, that not only a good story in Formula One, but in terms of like a sporting story, like again, I'll relate to football, like Portsmouth Football Club, for example. You know, they were living the life of the Premier League, and then they go in administration. They went from like the Premier League to the next league, to the next league, to the next league, and then they were just stuck at rock bottom. You know, nearly bowing out of football altogether, and now they're slowly back on the rise. And that's a bit like Daniil Kvyat as well. He's went from like top to bottom, then slowly coming back up again. And I think if he does get back to the top, like it's predicted, then let's tell the story. Let's celebrate that Daniil Kvyat is back. And yes, just what I was saying there about randomly being demoted and stuff, randomly being kicked off. We aren't strangers to see drivers being replaced during the season. Like we've seen it with HRT, with Virgin Racing or Manor Racing. We have seen it before, but very rare you would see it at the top teams. And it still bugs me to this day why they even did that. I know, yes, we did explain at the start that it was more, there was loads more to it, but I really would like to know the reasons why. And obviously, yes, it is forgotten about. It, what is done is done. As like I said, we should keep looking forward, so looking to the next race. But I think Daniil Kvyat definitely resurgence, without a shadow of a doubt, definitely, because obviously we have explained this as well. But not only to Red Bull and Christian Horner and everybody, to his critics, to people who genuinely didn't like him as a driver. I've never been the one to to dislike Daniil Kvyat. Maybe I've not been his biggest fan. Not in terms of I don't hate the guy. I might just be like, right, Daniil Kvyat, yeah, brilliant. Like with I don't know, Alex Albon. Albon, brilliant, good driver, but I don't think much of him. I'm not like an Albon fanboy or Daniil Kvyat fanboy. Like I would be a Hamilton fanboy. So I don't think of it much like that. But I think that there are people out there that I do see on Twitter, like the freaks, I was like to call them, who literally just barbaric, just harass Kvyat, just give him grief and everything all the time.
Keyboard warriors.
Exactly, keyboard warriors, that's the word I'm looking for. And as well, this just sprung my head all of a sudden, he's going to be a dad this year. I've just remembered that. So,
well, congratulations, Daniil Kvyat.
Yes, I've just remembered that, because obviously Kelly, he's with Kelly Piquet, obviously Nelson Piquet's dad. No, he's not, man. Oh. No.
Oh my god.
Bollock. No.
I mean, that's a good Formula 1 partnership, that, isn't it? A retired Formula 1 champion and a budding Formula 1 champion. Oh,
no.
God.
Sorry, he's with Kelly Piquet, Nelson Piquet's daughter. There we go. I got it right. No, he's not with his dad. Oh, he's not with Nelson Piquet. No. The three-time world champion. No. He's with his daughter.
I don't know what she thinks about that.
What have I just started? I've started something off. I've started rumours.
Rumours. Keyboard warriors.
Here come again. Daniil Kvyat's going out with what's it called? Nelson Piquet, three-time world champion. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so yes.
And let the record show that he said it, not me. I'm fine. I didn't say anything like that.
Yeah, I'll give him that. But anyways, yes. So, welcome to the Fan Picture if you're around here. So obviously he's going to be a dad. So, and again, that's something else to concentrate on as well, because he's not going to be bothered about what mistakes he makes or what happened in the past. He's got his future to look to, literally, because he's going to have a son or a daughter, which is really good to see. And this is just going to probably improve Daniil Kvyat's form as well, because I think isn't this thing where apparently if you have a child, it makes you 2 seconds faster. I hear those rumours, like when Rosberg had his daughter, he won the championship. Then I think Vettel had his first daughter, would have been, I'm guessing, 2013. That's when he went on to win the last 9 races. So they all say that it adds an extra 2 seconds onto your speed, or 2/10, I believe. I'm not too sure how accurate that is. Obviously, I know it's not accurate, but it's a little joke that the F1 drivers have with each other. So having the child, not him, Kelly, obviously, and so that could give him a little bit of boost as well. So happy days all round as well. Yes, obviously, just quickly, Lyle. Do you think he's going to score points in Bahrain? Yeah. Obviously, I know he didn't put. I know he didn't put him in top 3. But do you think you are? Oh, by the way, guys, if you haven't seen the preview, go and check it out now if you haven't already. So quickly.
Yes, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Don't watch this. Go and watch the preview, and then watch this.
And then watch this afterwards.
Watch the review, which will be on tomorrow after the race. And Lyle next to me will be hosting that episode, so don't miss it. Obviously, watch the race, then watch our preview.
Don't watch the preview first. Don't watch the preview. You'll be so lost.
All over the shop. So, anyways, Lyle. So, do you think Daniil Kvyat can score points again this weekend or not?
Well, I don't think so. No, because I didn't put him. I listed like my cheeky little, quite quick top 10. I didn't put him in there, but I do, wish him. I wish him the best of luck, and I do think that he will outscore Alexander Albon. And I think he's going to be on a charge. He really, really is. He's been in there. He said that there's no pressure. He said that in the press conference. But again, I don't think there's pressure, and there really isn't. If anything, actually, in terms of pressure, because when he was at Toro Rosso in 2018, Sorry, let's say in 2017. No, yes, he wasn't 2017. I wasn't in 2018. Yeah, sorry, 2017. Or actually, if you want to say the end of 2016, that's what I was going to say. In the end of 2016 and 2017, you could say that Daniil Kvyat did feel pressure because of what had happened to him. You know, John said at the start he was suffering from a bit of problems, which, you know, I don't want to say because I'm not too sure about it. But obviously, yeah, his feeling of Red Bull, you know, definitely wouldn't have helped anything that he was battling with outside the car. But you know, he might have felt a bit of pressure from that. I do feel like he's taken a year out, and then now he's back, and he have no pressure. That might actually help him as well, because as you know, drivers, you know, perform better when there is no pressure. Sometimes actually the pressure can get to you just to the point where you just don't perform.
There's no pressure on you, you perform better.
Yeah. Yes. Also, yes, it can actually help you. Like having a bigger crowd, you know, whatever your sport is, you know, makes you perform better. But yes, I do think it'll help. Obviously, yes, as well. He's a family man, which, you know, we've seen in Formula One. It can be done before. You don't have to be like Lewis Hamilton's and James Hunt's, and, you know, just not married and just there, single, ready to mingle, and, you know, just hammer down and then party all night. You can be a bit of a relaxed kind of family man, like we have seen with Sebastian Vettel and obviously Nico Rosberg, who made a point of it by saying, you know, like, I'm settled down, I have a wife and family in Monaco, and I'm the world champion. Obviously father son parent as well, so it can be possible, and I do wish him the best in Bahrain. But anyway, guys, that is the end of the F1 debate show. Obviously, thank you very much for watching. If you like what you see around here, obviously please like and subscribe. Leave us a comment down below. Obviously, what do you think of Daniil Kvyat? Obviously, did you hear about the trading places? You know, what did you make of it back then? What do you make of it now? And where do you think he's going to end up? Obviously, I'm happy, and Jordan is happy with, you know, who is where in Formula 1 now. Obviously, Max Verstappen, he did have so much potential, and I was watching the Spanish Grand Prix race the other day, or the highlights even, and it was saying, you know, 7 days ago he was having a meeting with the Toro Rosso team principal, which I believe was Franz Todt still back then, and they were talking about, you know, how they could make the car better, how they could fight to get in the points. Then 7 days later, he was on the top step of the podium, you know, winning the Spanish Grand Prix after all this controversy as well. And it's just like, you know, it's great that he's had the potential. It's great that he's had the opportunity. It's great Daniil Kvyat's back in Formula 1. He might have taken a bit of a longer road, but he still is in the same destination. So we're happy how things turned out, but Daniil Kvyat, he has been on a long road, and I think we all need to give him a bit of a look at and like a little bit of a shoulder, a bit of a push, a bit of a, go on son, I'm backing you in this season. It really is great to watch. Him, obviously, as I say, shared my driver of the day in Australia. Yes, obviously, let us know what you think about Danny, and obviously, yes, keep on track with us. Obviously, Bahrain Grand Prix is on at the moment. As Jordan said, go and make sure you check out our preview show, which came out on Thursday. Obviously, I'll be back tomorrow with the preview. With the review of the race. The last race in triple digits, guys. Yes, obviously, the Chinese Grand Prix, which is race 1000. Is coming up. That's going to be so amazing. Obviously, great landmark, and we're so happy that we can be on Formula 1. We can be on YouTube, obviously covering that with you guys for race 1000, which obviously isn't going to happen for another 70 years. After race 2000 is going to be another 70 years after this, so it's all big landmarks. So obviously, yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. So enjoy Bahrain, and we'll see you later.
See you later, guys.